Okay, Dan, thanks so much for joining me on the Security Space today, mate. Today, what we're talking about is all about cyber awareness. But like all the other pods, are you okay just to give the audience a quick introduction to yourself? If that's okay.
Yeah, hi Nick. Thanks for having me on. I'm Dan Dipple. I'm the cybersecurity manager for Charles Taylor, XREF for those that do potentially recognise my face as well. Cybersecurity awareness is a big thing for me. Happy to jump on and have a chat with you about it.
Perfect. Okay, so obviously, for those that have seen the title of the podcast already, is cyber aware, cyber strong. So, what does that actually mean then, Dan? What do we mean by that title?
I think the big thing is, the being cyber aware is, a lot of people think they're cyber aware, but they don't actually realize how bad some of these actors are that are out there. And I think it's just improving that knowledge of people. So looking at things that go on commonly around the world, and kind of inbreeding that thing into you. So that cyber strong is, there's a lot of things where we're aware of things. We go to a cash point, we put a pin number in, and what's the first thing you do? You tend to, haunch your shoulders over and try and cover your pin number. That's not taught. That's just a natural reaction. That's what you do all the time. Your parents might have told you a couple of times when you were a kid, and then you've always done it. Same thing when you leave your car in a potentially dodgy area, you lock it, or you might lock it twice, and depending on what kind of car you got, you might even check the door as well. But it's trying to breed those natural kind of things of being cyber aware, so cyber strong straight away. So you're looking at that all the time. So you don't have to go to your security specialist within the company and go, what do we need to do with this? It should be kind of a natural reaction, and that kind of, you're not always proactively thinking about it, but it's in the back of your mind, and you go, should I be doing this? This seems a little bit dodgy.
Yeah.
And being able to get that out into the people that need to know earlier.
Okay. So, like, just bringing it into sort of security terms, then is it a little bit like the a secure by design methodology? Are you like trying to say, like, look, rather than security just being an afterthought, it's like, look, let's put it in all the way through the process so that it's natural. Security is just a given. Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of, I'm more covering the human factor of it. So, I'm a Lego geek, as some people may well be aware. So, I think it's building those foundations early. That whether it's, you start with, throughout school they get a degree of cybersecurity awareness training. It's probably not as in depth as some of the later stuff, but the Instagram generation will be, kind of, don't do this, don't do that, etc. Whereas, the old and bold of us will turn around and go, oh, why do I need to be aware of this? And I think it's very difficult to get some people to buy into that, and then realize that, the impact that it could have by you clicking one email and link is quite strange. But I think even if you go down that route, and the way that a lot of people go, the human factor is the big bit. And it's always the humans that's the problem. I think we've flipped it completely. Every company you look at, you go, how much do you invest in cybersecurity tooling? And they will probably give you a very large number. And then you compare it to that security awareness piece, and they go, depending on what the company is, they might go, oh, I've got a PowerPoint presentation, they sit through it once a year, and that's enough. Which kind of does that tick box exercise. But then on the flip side of that, you've got some companies that have gone down the route of gamification. So you'll see multiple vendors out there who do things like this, which are great because it gets those people engaged and goes, well, right, okay. I know one of the companies I've had a demo of their product that they flip it on its head completely, and they go, right, here's, as part of the training, here's your phishing simulation. You are now taking the role of the attacker. Send the email. Right, you've only got a 20% success rate. Right, now which of these three options will you choose to get a higher success rate? So I think it's trying to move it away from that really easy way of going, it's just a tick box exercise, and you go, oh right, okay. And then when you suffer a breach, what, 9 times out of 10 you can kind of go back to, is there a point where it should have been stopped and somebody could have gone, actually this doesn't feel right. And that engagement and constant engagement will help.
Yeah. So let me pause a statement that's kind of arisen a lot throughout these podcasts then, and it is again, don't shoot the messenger. It is humans are the biggest cause and cure insecurity. So what's your sort of view on that then, Dan?
I think humans are the problems, the biggest misnomer. It did, throughout the 90s and the explosion of the internet. I grew up as a kid where, beeps and boops were your dial up for the internet. So, get off the internet. I want to go on the phone and call your grandma kind of thing. Whereas, there was no kind of, everyone heavily invested in antivirus and things like that. So, McAfee, AOL, Symantec, all that sort of stuff exploded massively. And that's where we invest, because we go, technology is always the problem. Well, technology, even the attackers are going, technology is not the problem. We know it's not the problem, because 9 times out of 10 it will catch us. Now we're looking at how easy is it to socially engineer someone, how easy is it to potentially get, compromise an account is a lot easier. I mean, you look at Uber, when that happened, and when you look at the fallout from it, yes, obviously from a security perspective, we're all going, oh no. But then when you bring it all the way back to the basics, and what's happened is a user was getting spammed for MFA all the time. And rather than going, well, I don't, yes, they use the IT side of it, but rather than going, no, I'm not giving you my MFA code, which would have been part of that awareness training. Again, there's a lot of stuff on that where you go, yeah, we forget it over a period of time. But the MFA side, you go, let's do, what was their security awareness around MFA? And if it was weak, then you can then go, well, we know where the problem is. We need to educate people better on that. And it's, because we've invested so much in the tooling and the technology, we've often forgot that the humans are not the problem. They are the solution to it, because ultimately they're the people that are working with your data day in, day out. And I think it's about trying to turn those people and make them think, not that they own the data, but, treat it as you would, it's your own front door. We've got all the doors. Why have we not locked them? And that's kind of one with security awareness training. I think a lot of people in the human factor, they go, yeah, the humans are always a risk. And you go, yeah, but what are we doing to try and stop that? In that sense.
Yeah. So what sort of positive impact can humans actually have when it comes to, security awareness, rather than us being like, like sometimes Jenny in HR, for example, oh God, like she's clicked on, 3 phishing emails this month, you know what I mean? Like, rather than having that mindset, how can we actually kind of use our people in our companies as a proactive measure rather than a reactive one?
I think getting those security champions out there is really key. And especially in, the kind of higher levels of the business, where people will go, oh yeah, whatever, kind of pay lip service to security. One of the ladies in our company who's like, I'm an old dog, you can't teach me any new tricks, etc., etc. That kind of thing. And I sat with her, because she obviously receives quite a lot of emails on a daily basis, and I went, right, I can see 2 there pretty quickly that I think are suspicious. And she went into them and she was like, oh, why do you think they're suspicious? And I went, I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is, because I know you've done the awareness training, is to go, what do you think's not quite right about it? And I had that conversation with her, and it was really, really good. And it was sort of, 10-15 minute call. And at the end of it, she was like, oh, thank you very much. And I thought, right, I see, I've done what I can in terms of that. But a week later, she then rings me again. She goes, "Can you just check that I am not going insane? This looks suspicious." And I went, "Right, let's jump on a call. Let's talk it through again." And I talked her through it, and I just took a step back and I went, "Why do you think it's dodgy?" We then obviously spun off an investigation off the back of that.
Mm.
But it was the ability for her to go, "A week ago, I taught you
Yep.
markers. And then this week, you've then gone, all these flags are showing up for me, Dan.
Yep.
What can we do?" And that's that positive impact of going, you know what, your security team are actually there to help you. We don't want to be the dog in the corner that's ready to bite. The big thing is to educate people.
Yep.
We'll never learn everything. And anybody thinks that they have learned everything, potentially not. I mean, humans
Yep.
are a very, very strange beast at the best of times. We're all completely different. So, and I think that's the way you do it. Once you get a security champion who goes, actually go and speak to them, they'll be able to help you out, or they might have another way of doing it,
Mm.
that's maybe more secure, or meets whatever policies that you're looking at doing. So, and I think that's the big thing is, the humans are there to be a positive effect, and if you can get buy-in from a couple, then they have a chat over, depending on where you are. Obviously, a lot of people are still working from home. That you
Mm.
can then go. They're stood at the water cooler or having a coffee and going, "Oh, I had a great chat with Dan the other day, etc. He talked to me about this and blah blah blah, and you know, I actually learned something, but then I've put it into practice this week and I've identified something early,
Yep.
which may be part of a bigger bit. And it's things like when people go, "Oh, it's just a phishing email, but I report it," and you go, "It only takes one person to
Yep.
report it, but it could be the entire company's been hit with a phishing campaign."
Yep.
Um, and that one person that reports it may be, "Oh, look, we've got, Charles Taylor's about 4,000 people. We've got 4,000 emails from this phishing campaign. What do we
Yep.
now do?" We can then go in and purge, but it relies on that person going, "Here's the phishing email.
Yep.
This is the one that I spotted. This is why I think it's, and they've identified those markers straight away."
Yep. Yep. So, and just to be quite cynical, to put a cynical mindset on it, obviously that's a lot of your time that you invest in sort of like one person, and I know you've got your other responsibilities as well as your BAU. So, is there a more sort of holistic approach, or is that besides the point? Is that why we're kind of falling a little bit behind in terms of cyber awareness, because it's not one of them that you can just do a flagship. This is your cyber training. Go away. Do you have to give that one to one? It's just like the pros and cons of time,
Yeah, I
cost.
mean, the one-to-one side of it is great. Is
Mm.
absolutely great because it gets your name out in the business, and you build those relationships with people, and they may be in departments you never ever think you're going to work with again, but chances are you probably will. Um, but it's that you can't that kind of big bang explosion where you go, "Well, yeah, here you go. Here's all the information. Expect people to retain it. It's not going to happen."
Mm.
There's been mountains of psychological studies that have shown that. But again, I think it's how you then bring that in. So a lot of platforms are moving to the route of more granularity. So smaller training videos, rather than being like an hour long, it'd be like, "Oh, are you sure you meant to do this?" Or "You've clicked on this phishing link. Here's a 2-minute video with a little quiz at the end so that you understand it," etc. So there's multiple ways of looking at it. But I think the big thing is, rather than kind of shutting the doors and going, "No, I don't want your questions,"
Mm.
I think being able to afford them that actually says, "Do you know what, they care a little bit about what's going on,"
Yeah.
because they call me paranoid, but it's kind of that ex-military factor
Mm.
of, I know how bad these guys can be, and it's whether or not you don't want to scare them into it, but also you want to go, "This is what could potentially happen afterwards," and talk
Yeah.
them through it. So yeah, the overall sort of cyber direction has got to come from the top,
Okay.
whether that's C-suite, whether that's owner of the business, depending on how big or how small you are. Is if you educate the people early, it's a lot easier for you, and the other question that then kind of spins off that is who drives it? You go,
Yeah.
is it HR? Is it the infosec team? Is it other parts of the business? And you go, that's where the perfect collaboration comes in. You go, here's your security team. We want to improve and reduce the risk, but as part of your benefits package, which is what it is really, is you don't use the cybersecurity awareness just for in work.
Yeah.
You will use it at home. So the natural thing is, anyone who's got a free email account, go and have a look in your spam box. I think I've had about 500 today alone. And that's just, at some point my email has been breached or it's been on a leak list somewhere.
Right.
But, a Hotmail, a Gmail account doesn't have the security products on top
Yep.
that a business
Okay.
does.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those where you go, you may not see it as often in your inbox, but
Yeah.
when it comes to your personal email, you're probably going to see a lot of that, and you can look at it and go, right, I can see the markers that I've seen at work,
Yeah.
but also the ability to share that content with everyone.
Yeah. So if what you're saying then, if like obviously humans being, cyber aware is, a very crucial part of a company's security, why does budgets fluctuate from company to company? Why is everyone not like people first, technology second? Why have we got this message out there? What do you think to that?
I think a lot of it is to do with whether or not they think the return on investment is going to be worth
Right.
it. And I think that's one of the big things is, depending on what platform you go for, they can range from, I mean, hours being 4,000 people, they can range from sort of 20 grand to 100 grand. And
Yep.
they go, there's a big difference. But
Yep.
what you get is in that capability. So you look at things like that and you go, is it worth the 100 grand investment? Well, if you look at the stats and how much a breach could potentially cost you at the moment, it's in the region of $600,000 per instance. Um, so if you then work that back and you go, well, what does that equate to? Well, that's 5 years return on investment straight away. And that's only one breach.
Yep.
If you're in an industry that's heavily targeted, insurance tends to be that way at the moment because there's ready cash available, is the perception. Um, that you will go, well, how many people do you reckon I can get around this business?
Yep.
So if you suffer 2, 3, 4 breaches a year, you're then going, you're looking at 10, 15 years worth of cybersecurity awareness training. And then when you investigate and go, what was the root cause of it? Was it poor education for the user? And if it is, then you then go, well, we don't need to we don't need to build a business case. Your business case is written itself,
Yeah.
which is a frustrating place to be in. But again, at the same point, they obviously the execs in the company are looking and going, it's a lot of money to throw at just for user training.
Yep.
Um, but the technology side is, it's easy to see because you go, how many incidents have you stopped? Well,
Mm.
I've stopped 40,000, just a random number, 40,000 incidents this year from this product. But how
Yep.
many have you stopped from security awareness training? I can't tell you because I don't know the answer is the problem. And I think that's where they go, there's no metrics involved. So you
Yep.
can't justify it to, if you're privately owned, oh yeah, you spent £100,000 on security awareness training. What have you got off the back of it? And you go, well, actually, the number of breaches
Yep.
um, and money paid out is significantly low. That's the only way you could do it. But without going back over historically and saying,
Yeah.
last year we had, say, I don't know, 10, the year before we had 20, but
Yeah.
we introduced the security awareness platform here. We've had 10 that year. We've now got 5 this year. You then go, well, you can see the decrease,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
that's 600 grand a time. It's £300,000 you've saved.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Firstly, obviously, you've got to speak in their language, haven't you? To obviously, like you say, the ROI on it has to be there. But then, secondly, weird way, it is what you say. It's kind of like they need you to. Again, it's with security. It's like you don't know until it's too late. So let's just say a company gets hit in year one, and then if you invest all this money in the training, and then you don't get hit in year two. It's not a like for like. You just might not have just been hit the same way. But like you say, it's probably a logical assumption that it shouldn't be that way. I know what you mean, but we're on this side of the fence. But yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. So what is then the sort of cost to sort of the people in the business by not receiving any sort of training? What do you think?
I think it's. I mean, you look at it when I've seen where obviously people are creating links, etc., and they go, "Oh bloody hell!" Like they feel like they've done something wrong, and that's their natural kind of, oh, "I've done something wrong," etc., etc. And you're like, "Well, no, you haven't." You look at the world where it used to be, you know, 5, 10 years ago, for argument's sake, it was like, don't click links, don't open attachments, don't do this, etc. And you go, what happens now? Like the whole world has almost gone to cloud pretty much. So
Mm,
you go, well, where are your documents? Are in this link, this hyperlink, which may go to SharePoint, it may disappear off to a C2. You don't know. And I think that's the problem is it's very, very difficult to turn around and say, this is what it is straight away. And they automatically go, oh, no, heads in hands, I've cost the business a load of money. And you go,
yeah,
yes and no, but what's the impact for you? You shouldn't be scapegoated for the fact that you've done it. Two things for me that it kind of it brings out is there's obviously there's a gap in the tooling or there's a
yeah,
gap in the coverage, um, and you've highlighted that. Um, Warranted, we didn't want it to be highlighted, the fact that there was a gap in the coverage, but at least we found out where the hole is. And the human risk is people may, they may turn around and think, oh God, everybody thinks I'm useless, etc. I'm really struggling with it. We've all seen over the years where there's obviously catfishing is quite common
mm,
and everything else where you see it in the newspapers pretty much every week is somebody else has gone, oh yeah, I've sent all my life savings to some person in Turkey, thought we were going to get married, and then you go, but why would you not do that? And then that goes back to that initial thing of, if they're cyber aware and they're at that point of cyber strong, they then go, well, hold on, why? Like I've
yeah,
never met this bloke. Why am I sending excessive amounts of money to him? Why am I paying for flights to this place or paying phone bills? And it's very like it's quite easy for us to turn around and say, well, you shouldn't have done it. But that's not the way to approach it. Is how have they managed to get to that point where they're asking you for it? Um, and they target their victims very well.
yeah,
So and for some people it may be it completely destroys their lives, whereas others it may well be brush it off as happened. You know,
yeah,
everybody clicks links, everybody opens documents at the moment. It's just being aware of what you can do to stop it.
yeah,
And the potential human side of it is ridiculous. We've seen some people where it's got so bad they've taken their own life and things because it's literally the whole world's collapsed around them
mm,
because they've gone from having a nice house that they may have paid off, nice car, etc. They've got money coming in, and then the next thing they know, like they've remortgaged their house, they've had to sell the car to pay
yeah,
off all these massive debts they've got, and they've gone, what's the point anymore?
yeah,
Um, so I think that's the big thing is that there are massive extremes, but the day to day will be the impact on them mentally is to go,
yeah,
I can't believe I fell for it. And you're like, the whole world at the moment runs on links and opening files, etc. So for you to be one of the, I mean, if you look at it, there's probably 10, 15 billion emails a day.
mm,
You are one of an unlucky number that have done it. And I think that's the way to approach it. Say, look, it's not your fault. Um, it's just highlighting gaps and things that we might need to educate people better on.
yeah,
And I think that's the way to approach it rather than going and jumping on top of people. Because ultimately, what's the next thing they're going to do? They'll never engage with security again.
yeah. They'll get their walls up,
And
won't
you
they?
don't want that. What you want to do is go down that education piece and say, look, kind of put an arm around the shoulder and go, here we go. Look, it's not as bad as you think. Yes, you know, you've made an error. Everybody does. But how can we potentially in the future, if you're targeted again, you then come to us and say, look, I've seen this. Can you just double check? I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's building that bridge between the two, because there is a massive gap, I think, with some security teams where they are very much like, no, this is how you do it. There's no deviation whatsoever. But then when something does go wrong, they jump on people rather than going, let's sit down, let's have a chat, let's walk through it and see what's actually happened, and put it down. And a lot of the post-incident reports will be, there's never any blame attached to it. It's, this is what's happened. This is a potential identifier of a root cause for it.
Yep.
And then you move on from there. So the business will obviously change their processes maybe a little bit, but engaging with the users, probably the key thing is to just say, look, it happens. These people are very, very good at what they do.
Yeah. So because they are very good at what they do, how often would you actually provide, security awareness training? Because obviously it's constantly evolving, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think that's another one of those that is contentious. We in the military used to do it once a year.
Yep.
And what used to make me laugh was it was the same content every single year on
Mm.
year, same use cases, same studies, etc., etc. And you go, I sat through this last year and the year before that and the year before that and the year before that, and you're like, the only thing we ever saw change was the counter-terror threat level, and you're like, there's no content change.
Yep.
But I think is that constant incremental stuff where 90% of users theoretically shouldn't need that additional cybersecurity awareness training or past the
Yep.
baseline. So you give them a baseline of training. So rather than going, here's an hour,
Mm.
sit down and go through it. And a lot of the policies that you have to write have to be more granular now, because people go, well, there's a grey area, and you go, right, okay, we've got to close that grey area, and then it makes the policy longer, and you're like, nobody wants to sit there and read like a 400-page document on
Yeah.
security, and you go, well, how do you break it down so it's nice and easy?
Yeah.
And I've had platforms where it's been done on Moodle, where, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure most of the people watching a podcast will do the same, as you get there with a mouse and you go, blast it as fast as you can, get to the quiz, and hopefully pass the quiz at the end. And you go, that's what people do. And
Yeah.
I think it's trying to stop people and actually get them to engage. And, one of the things that I've done in ours is introduced a bit of DLP stuff as well. So the DPO team, I've worked with them quite heavily, is to turn around and go, right, well, what's actually the impact of a potential breach? And
Yep.
making people think like that. So added that into the security awareness training. And it's
Yep.
kind of a gotcha, but it also means that anybody that wasn't paying attention won't get the answer, which
Yeah. Yeah.
is what's the GDPR fine if there's a breach, and you're like 4%, 20 million euros. That's ingrained in my head. I don't think I will ever forget that. I didn't think I'd ever be into reading about GDPR, but that's the way it's gone, is being able to look at stuff like that and go, this is what's happening. This is how much it could potentially cost the company for every instance of a breach, depending on obviously the severity of it. But
Yeah.
any breach, we've got to report. So that's cyber insurers. If there's personal information, it's obviously got to go to the ICO, etc. And quite difficult as well,
Yeah.
because we're multinational. I think we work in 85 countries. So trying to get somebody who's based in Australia to go, you need to understand GDPR, and they go, no, I don't. I work in Australia. I don't care. And they go, yeah, but where's all the data hosted? And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the consideration you've got to look at. And there's all the regulations going around that, etc. And you go, it's an absolute minefield.
Yeah.
And I think that the annual basis stuff is, probably should have died a death quite a long time ago.
Yeah. I was gonna say,
But
don't
being
think a
able
year's too
to,
long.
yeah, to kind of get involved and keeping people out there and up to date. So security newsletters once a quarter maybe. So not just business focused, but look at stuff at home. So vast majority of people now have Amazon Alexas or Google Nest or something like that. Have you secured them? Guaranteed 99% of people have not. or is it on a separate portion of your Wi-Fi network? And you go, well, don't really care about it. It's fine. It's not a problem. And you go, this is where you have the argument with people. And I think it's that constant education of going, have a look at this. This is to do with stuff at home. So QNAP network devices. I'm pretty sure if anyone's got one at home, please set fire to it. Because they've had that many breaches in 0 days. I think I lost count at one point. I think they're in the news every week for it. So, but yeah, I think it's that constant engagement and updating people. And if you can get those nudges, as they call them, kind of around the industry of, you shared a file with somebody outside of the network. Did you mean to share it to the entire internet? Because a lot of people, and this is one where the controls come into it, is a lot of people go, well, I just shared it with the default settings. And then you're going, should we maybe change the default settings so it doesn't share with everyone, it only shares with the email address? But you don't find that out until somebody's already done it. But the good thing is, with a lot of these newer platforms and the way they're working it, is going, nudge, hello, you've shared this information, this PII information with the entire internet. Anyone who's got this link can access it. Did you mean to do that? Or did you want to share it with just the individual that's on the email chain? And the second you click only the person, click yes, it then does all the background work. So the user literally goes, oh, made a mistake, click yes, hit submit, and then just go, right, hit your selection, hit yes, and then it will go and do all the work for you. You know then that you're more secure, but it's nudging you to go, next time I send a file, maybe I'm going to look at things like that. And that's it, that just in time kind of awareness to go, oh, I've done this, should I have done it? And it's easy to do because we all do it and we go, oh yeah, the default settings should be all right. And you go, yeah, but they're not really, though, are they? And that's that pushes back on the InfoSec team, but it also pushes onto the IT teams. We go, if you're going to build it secure by design. And if you go with those principles, at least it's easier to tone it back than it is to implement new controls. As anybody will tell you who works in the industry, sometimes trying to get some controls implemented is like trying to set fire to diesel. It's not an easy thing to do. But again, it's like, if you've already got the control in place and somebody goes, I can't do this, I need to do it, you can then tone it back. So yeah, I think it's that education piece and constantly educating people where they need it. There will be a lot of people around the business that don't need it, but also trying to get specific as well, I think, is one of the key things. That, as you mentioned earlier, HR, they work in a completely different way to somebody in legal, they work different to someone in finance. Somebody in InfoSec is probably going to be a little bit more aware of what they're doing in terms of data classification and sending stuff out, etc. But if you've got somebody, say, who's, I don't know, obviously working in the insurance industry, that it's not easy for everyone to comprehend. But if you think of, let's say, a guy that works on a building site, he will sit there with his phone, he'll do whatever, he'll do a snag list or whatever job he's got to do, and he'll send stuff across. What he might not realize is somebody sat on his phone doing stuff. Because that's, they don't need to be aware of stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's quite difficult, but yeah, I think the constant training, I think it helps massively. And I think anybody that's had those platforms has seen a change in behavior, rather than it being, oh, cybersecurity awareness again. It's that driving culture where you go, just culture, I think, is probably one way to put it, where you can turn around and say, actually, you've made a mistake, it's not a problem. How do we then go and solve it? We're not here to bite you. We're here to actually trying to help you run the business better and more secure, while reducing the risk at the same time.
No, precisely that. No, some excellent points raised today, Dan. Thanks so much for obviously joining us on the security space. Obviously, if anybody would like to, ping Dan a question or get some advice, or even dispute anything that you might have said today, then please do just fire your questions into the comments as well. But yeah, once again, Dan, thanks so much for jumping onto the Scooter Space.
No, brilliant. Thank you very much, Nick, for having me.